the sins of national leaders will bring God's displeasure upon them and their citizens. I want you to look again at 2 Chronicles 32 and just notice some words here. You see, it tells you there that in verse 25 in this statement that there was wrath upon him and upon Judah and Jerusalem. And yet in the next verse it tells us that when it comes to humbling and to repenting, it's only Hezekiah and it's only the inhabitants of Jerusalem have repented. Well, where's the rest of Judah here? It tells us that wrath has come down upon Judah. And yet we're told that it's only Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem are repenting. Well, as from what we find here that the Lord is pleased with this, we have to conclude that the sin wasn't Judah's. The sin was Hezekiah's and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. But the judgment came down upon Judah. They partook of the judgment, though they had no part of the sin. Yet because Hezekiah was their king, their nation partook of the judgment that was going to come upon them. And if we believe in verbal inspiration and the Lord preserving His word, then we notice those little details about what is included and what is not, and what is said about who repented and who didn't, and who the wrath of God came upon and who it didn't. It brings you to the conclusion that the sins of national leaders will bring displeasure down upon them and their citizens. And there's where it comes a lot closer to home for us. You know, even going back to David's sins, if you think of that other incident where he numbered Israel, and that was to do with pride. 2 Samuel 24, he was lifted up and he decided he wanted to know how many he had in Israel on his side, and the Lord said that that was never to happen without the redemption money being paid, and David never brought in the redemption money. 70,000 died in Israel as a result of David's sin. David's sin, the consequences came upon the people, his own people. You see, the sins of national leaders will come upon us. The consequences of those sins, the judgments of God upon those sins. And that's why it's such a tragic thing at present. There's not a mention of the Lord. And all the trouble that is in our nation, in the world, there's not a leader that says we need to ask the Lord for His help. We need to look to the Lord for His intervention. Not a one. And they're just going to muddle on their own. And they'll bring death. They're bringing death to their nation. But all the consequences of the sins of those, and when you think about the sins of some of those who are in government in Westminster or in Stormont, the consequences are going to come upon us. Elijah didn't escape the consequences when the judgment of God came down in his day. He suffered the lack of water. He was living beside the drying brook and needed the Lord's miraculous intervention. God's people don't escape. We don't escape, and that's why we should be so concerned that we cry to God for help and for an intervention. And may the Lord make us to hate pride in ourselves and to lament the consequences of the sins of national leaders. You can say all you want, and many have, rightly so, about Trump. And I'm no supporter of Trump. But this past week, at some place or other, Trump said America needs the Bible. America needs the Lord. He's a wretch of a man. But you'll never find words like that coming out of leaders in our nation. That this land needs the Bible or this land needs the Lord. Oh, that it were so. Oh, may the Lord have mercy on us.